pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have roll call.
Mr. Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Rucker.
Here.
Mr. Henry.
Here.
Mr. Ister.
I need a motion to accept the reports of the fire department, police department, treasurer, engineer, code office, public works, development, and planning commission. Need a second? Vote.
Ms. Kramer.
Yes, thank you.
Mr.
Sorry.
Rucker.
Yes.
Mr. Ister.
Yes.
Mr. Boucher.
Yes. Okay.
Well, she didn't ask us.
Yeah, but she asked me and I.
Okay, yeah, yes.
Dale.
You're all
Yes.
yes.
Dale, go and vote yes.
Can I do it at the box or here?
Right here.
Mr. Henry.
Here?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
We're going backwards, Dale. Going backwards.
I'm still here.
Any audience comment on any of the agenda items at this time? Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a comment, but would you like to introduce your recording secretary?
Well, this is our substitute for the substitute. This is Megan Delsite. She's a major in communication. We told her she can save her speech for last, so she can think about that a while.
Thank you.
We'll see how good that works. Well, we're going to put the meeting on hold for right now, and we're going to have a CDBG public meeting.
Public hearing now. Thank you.
You are now in charge.
All right, I'll turn it over to Bill. We have a sign-in sheet up here and some agendas. If you all wouldn't mind, we'll start circulating that. I don't know if anybody needs an agenda or would like one. Pass them around. You all have them up here? While Dan does that, I'll go ahead and start. Good evening. I'm Bill Siegel. I'm the City Council of Governments. Nice to be before the council again. I haven't been here for a while. When Dan mentioned to Terry he was doing the public hearing tonight and mentioned that he had about an hour's worth of notes, Terry suggested maybe that was longer than he wanted to read. And so he took me out of storage, dusted me off, and said, "See if you can do it in less time." So that's why I'm here before you tonight. This hearing is really not only for the members of council, but for the public as well. And I'm going to step forward so that I can at least face most of you as I do this. It is the first public hearing for the City of Sunbury's Community Development Block Grant Program. The Community Development Block Grant Program is a program that originates at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD as we know it. It's a federal grant program. And the City of Sunbury is an annual entitlement. They receive an annual allocation of funds each year to undertake community development projects in the city. This year they have been allocated $272,958. $272,958. A portion of that is set aside to administer the program, which is a 5-year contract. They'll have about $225,000 net to allocate to projects. Attached to the agenda that Dan just circulated is a schedule of the various meetings and hearings that are required as part of this program. But basically, I'll summarize by saying the application is due September 23rd to the Department of Community and Economic Development in the state of Pennsylvania. And the final hearing will be held August 1st. So what will transpire between now and that time is we've been reaching out to identify projects up till tonight. We'll ask the public for any other project proposals this evening. At the conclusion of tonight's hearing, we'll no longer take new project proposals, but we'll work to develop the proposals that we're aware of. The council will announce its decisions of the projects it's going to fund on August 1st, and then we'll schedule a final hearing, conduct a final hearing for the application to be submitted on the 3rd. So that's sort of a quick overview of the schedule. There are two thresholds in the CDBG program that you have to meet in order to use these funds. The first is the relatively low threshold, and that is eligible activities. And under the federal regs, most activities that a community might want to undertake are eligible. Economic development, community development, public services, environmental infrastructure, streets, roads, bridges, water, sewer, pretty much anything you can think of as a community development activity. It's easiest to remember what's eligible by remembering what isn't eligible. You cannot pay for general purpose government, you can't build this building. You can't do general routine maintenance, you can't paint curbs, you can't paint lines on the street, those kinds of things. The last item is you can't purchase equipment or maintenance equipment. So those are the things you can't do. Beyond that, most things are eligible in this program. The higher hurdle, or the more difficult challenge of the two, is you must demonstrate that every activity meets one of three federal criteria. You must either benefit low and moderate income persons, you must eliminate a slum or blighting influence in the community, or you can respond to urgent need issues. Generally, those are gubernatorial disasters. So the city of Sunbury really focuses on low and moderate income benefit or the elimination of slum and blight. Any questions on the overview of the program? Yes.
Regina Russell, community activist. When you make a list of the recipients, is that information of public disclosure or?
Absolutely. In fact, the decisions and the awards that council makes will be made in a public meeting. It will be published it'll be posted or published in the paper, listing the projects that have selected and the amount of funds that have been earmarked for each of those projects. And then in addition to those public announcements, it's always public information either through the city or through CEDACOG, who administers the program.
I did a right to know, I think, last year and was denied that information.
At CEDACOG?
Yes, sir.
On what grounds?
I don't know if you were working there at that time.
I've been there 32 years, so there's a good chance I was.
They did cite something, and I'll be happy to.
I'd like to talk with you. I'll give you my card. I'll talk with you. I'm sorry if that occurred.
It
If
did.
you were entitled, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here this evening to raise it. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned not being able to build this building. I think you mentioned that under the precepts of government,
General purpose government.
but as far as economic development, capital costs could be requested.
Yes, and this was probably not a good example because this building really serves multiple purposes. But
Right.
the city council couldn't build a council building.
Right.
But yes, you could do an economic development activity that Bill doing. Yes. Thank you. Good question. A few things that are regulatory requirements that the city addresses during the public hearings. We use this opportunity to speak to the public about these. Most of these documents, these requirements, are attached to the agenda that Dan distributed. The first is a fair housing notice, and the city annually publishes the fair housing notice to alert the public to their commitment to fair housing and to make the public aware of where complaints can be filed if there is a need to file a complaint. Additionally, the city does an annual outreach of some type. This year, they're actually communicating relative to some new zoning ordinances and the court interpretations of zonings that have influenced or had negative impact on fair housing. And so, generally, the city is committed to fair housing and has established a complaint policy. I won't read the entire thing, nor will I read the anti-displacement plan, which I believe is 6 or 7 pages long. But I'll tell you that the city of Sunbury has also adopted a plan that says they will not use the community development block grant funds to buy out and displace individuals living within the city. And that came about because many years ago, some cities were using federal funds to buy out lower income neighborhoods and force people to relocate to other communities. And so they are prohibited from doing that. The city has not ever taken any action like that, but they are required to have an anti-displacement plan in place. And if there is displacement that should occur, they will provide relocation assistance and one-for-one replacement of the housing stock that would be lost that would be eligible for low and moderate income persons. So that plan is there, you're welcome to review it. CECOG would be happy to answer any questions that may come up. We can be contacted with questions, and we'll be happy to discuss it. The third task this evening, or the third policy this evening, is a 504 annual review and analysis. Federal government, the federal regulations require a recipient of the CDBG funds to annually make an outreach to the community to identify accessibility concerns that might exist in either the programs or the facilities owned by the city. As such, this hearing is serving that purpose, and I would invite the public or any members of council who are aware of any facilities or programs which present an access problem or concern to raise those issues now so that we can note those as we move forward. Hearing none, we'll move on. The last item under the discussions is the Section 3 preference. Section 3 are individuals that are economically disadvantaged individuals or businesses. And the Community Development Block Grant Program, which derives from HUD, is geared toward helping lower and moderate income individuals and families get a leg up. And one of the decisions that was made by the Congress in the program was if we're going to invest federal tax funds in helping low and moderate income people, and we're going to do that by building projects, doing construction, building water, sewer, roads, bridges, whatever, shouldn't we make those opportunities available to the low and moderate income persons residing in the community? And so under that logic, the Section 3 preference program developed. And what it says is that a person who meets the Section 3 or lower income criteria in the city, or a business that is a Section 3 type business, will be given a preference and an opportunity to participate in programs and projects that are funded with these funds. And so through the bidding process, through the specifications, the bidding, and the solicitations we do, we will make an outreach to Section 3 businesses and Section 3 individuals, a proactive outreach to identify those. These are all part of the city's community development plan, and at this point I would ask if there's any discussion or questions on any of those. Okay. Let me move on then and talk in some detail about the current program year. First thing we want to do this evening is we want to invite the public to comment on any projects, thank you, that have been funded previously by the city. Some of those projects include the Chestnut Street project, which is the reconstruction of Chestnut Street. First phase being completed, the second phase under development. The clearance and demolition work that's been done through the redevelopment authority where abandoned properties have been acquired and either resold or demolished. Those are some of the projects funded recently. Some of the ones in the past were Cameron Park, Stroh Alley, other improvements, the participation in the Riverfront project. And so at this point, I would invite any of the audience to make any comments relative to those projects. Congratulations to the council or criticism thereof. Yes, in the back.
Joe Bartello, how exactly does the Chestnut Street project fall under one of those three categories? Does it benefit low to middle income people somehow?
Chestnut Street is viewed as serving the entire city because it's a main corridor. The city of Sunbury has a 60.8 low and moderate income percentile. Therefore, the project serves 60.8% low and moderate income persons and meets the 51% criteria.
I mean, what does it actually do to benefit low to middle income people?
It provides accessibility to the city and provides accessibility for businesses and so forth within the city. City improvements.
I mean, I can see it was a new street, but it was already there.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's improvement of an existing street.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Can we, I've asked this several times, Mr. Siegel.
Siegel, correct.
Okay. Our sidewalks are horrible.
Okay.
And a lot of the sidewalks are still slated. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but they're made of slate, so when they become wet, they're very slippery. and I find that to be a safety hazard and should be a concern. How can we get improvements done like that? I spoke to who was it? What's her name? The young lady?
Jamie.
Yes, Jamie.
Jamie Schroeder.
And Jamie, I believe, was going to fill out a form or make a request so that we could have funds for that.
Okay. Help me out, and I don't recall if it was in the Community Development 3-year plan. It very likely was if you spoke to Jamie about that. We will be reviewing that plan. Are you talking about the sidewalks in the downtown or in front of private homes?
In front of private homes as well as downtown, but when you speak of downtown, you're speaking of the main street, like Market Street,
Yes.
where all the businesses are?
Yes.
No, I'm not speaking of that, but I would be speaking of Front Street, which
Okay.
are in front of private homes.
Okay.
But that street is used a lot when you have Sunbury Wine Festival, Sunbury River Fest, where you have people walking the sidewalks.
There's two ways we can approach that project idea. If it were a downtown Market Street in front of the business section, we could probably qualify that because by benefiting the downtown, we would be serving the entire city of Sunbury. And it would probably qualify based on the city's low and moderate income percentage of 60%. When we get into individual households, traditionally, and I'm speaking off the cuff here, so I may be in error. Traditionally, the sidewalk is the responsibility of the individual homeowners. And the codes actually can enforce the maintenance of those sidewalks. What we would have to do in order to fund sidewalk program with CDBG funds, and some communities we're working with do this, you have to actually have a requirement that any sidewalk that doesn't meet the code is replaced. And then identify those, and then homeowners that meet the low and moderate income guideline on a case-by-case basis apply for funding assistance to replace the sidewalk in front of their home.
Good. How do we implement something like that?
We will write that up, just based on your presence tonight.
Yes.
We will include it for discussion with the city council as a potential project. And city council will be ultimately ranking and deciding on the project activities.
You sound like an honorable gentleman. I would like to also, while you're here,
This gentleman laughed when you said that.
well, he knows how long I've been trying to get things like this done. So now, the city at one time did get funds to help, I guess you would say, homeowners. And in my community, we live very close, walking distance, a couple of blocks, 2-3 blocks from a high school. So you got a grant from,
Probably Department of Transportation.
no, it was it's another one where they deal with blocks. I brought it to the attention of council, and it should be on record. But it was another agency that gave us funds, Safe School Routes.
Okay, that's PennDOT money.
All right,
Yep.
so that money was not used in this area. It may have been used for 1 or 2 blocks close to the school, but not
Right.
residents that may have been
Very
across the
limited.
street, yes. And so that area is still now terrible.
Okay.
So you have overgrown trees, you got the sidewalks rising, you have inclines, deep inclines, and the children are walking these sidewalks. And that, again, is a public safety issue.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
When I was young, I used
Oh,
to
boy.
walk all around.
he laughed again.
I'll pay for it.
But when you walked on Chestnut Street, you had to watch the sidewalk. You couldn't look up.
They're better now?
No, they're not.
So it's not new.
No.
2 blocks.
Okay.
The blocks are better up, what, from Market?
They're from front to.
Yes. Yeah.
To church.
Okay.
Okay, so those are some of the previously funded projects, and we talked about a new project, potential sidewalk project for residents. I want to talk about some of the other projects we're aware of, because one of the things we've done in the process of developing project at this point is reach out to members of council, public works and so forth to identify possible projects. And we're aware of the following projects. Additional funding for Chestnut Street Phase 2 is one that was proposed and under consideration. It would be eligible, street reconstruction, and it meets the principal benefit to low and moderate income persons. Continued assistance to the redevelopment authority or the housing authority for clearance and demolition. And that is an eligible activity. We have to be very careful about making sure they're vacant and non-occupiable homes. And it does meet the criteria of elimination of blight. So that the city can spend up to 30% of its funds on that activity. The fire department has submitted a request for emergency radio equipment. And that would be eligible as a public facilities. Equipment is generally ineligible, but fire companies have a specific exemption in the federal regulations for equipment. So radio equipment, emergency equipment would be eligible. And because the Sunbury Fire Department serves the entire city, it would serve predominantly low and moderate income persons. The next project is a request from the fire department. This is their second priority. They've had 2 requests in. We require them to prioritize, and radio equipment is their first priority. Their second request is for a hose washer. That is not a person, that is a machine. And that request would be both eligible and would be fundable, again, as a public facilities serving predominantly low and moderate income persons. And finally was a request from the Public Works Department for parking meter equipment to repair and upgrade existing parking meters. And that project is not eligible. That's viewed as maintenance and is not eligible. So we cannot consider that. We will list it as a request, but it will not be considered for funding. At this point, I would open again for any other project.
Question in
Thank you.
What about police equipment? Is that considered under the realm of the fire department also?
Police equipment is considered general purpose government.
So that's not considered
It's not
essential?
It's not considered an eligible activity. The equipment, there's a special waiver for fire departments, and that's been extended to ambulance service, but that's all the further it's gotten extended.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
You said the fire department, is it the fire department collectively, or is it a fire department individual?
It is, the request is from the Sunbury Fire Department. Now, one of the things we have to do as we look closely at the projects is make sure that it's serving the whole city and not one or two of the companies. Good question. We can use you.
Oh, I have 1,000 of them.
Not tonight.
Oh, these guys would love to stay. What was the second proposal that you?
The second proposal is the continued assistance to the authority, either the redevelopment authority or the housing authority for the acquisition and demolition of property.
Okay,
Land use.
who makes the determination of whether or not a house is not livable, I guess you would say, if it's not stable?
Well, there's a couple questions there. Livable has to do with the amount of time it's been vacant and the code violations. Stable has to do with an engineering assessment.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's the codes department and it's been the redevelopment authority and their personnel.
So it's not like an engineering firm, that would be like a third party, so to speak?
Generally not,
That
because,
would not be,
because generally what we have is we have a building that's been vacant, a building that's got severe code violations, and a building that is generally not going to be salvageable affordably.
and how's that documented?
That by the codes office, by the codes office of the authority. And then what is looked at is they assess whether or not they can be sold to a private individual to renovate and sell in order to try to maintain tax base, or alternatively acquire them.
If I can,
That could be a little convoluted.
I would say, if I can help out with that process too, I can speak up and say the redevelopment authority, more often than not, is finding that the property is not needing to be demolished. We've had a lot of luck of selling them to general contractors and having them bring them up to code. If it does need to be demolished, it goes through a full environmental review before it is, any of the grant monies are used. So there is a full procedure that's in place, but a lot of them we've been very lucky. you know, Sunbury is starting to get to the point where we have a hard time finding ones that need to be demolished at this point, which I think is a good problem to have.
And I think that's a commentary on the commitment the city has made to that effort, because property owners have begun to take seriously the responsibility, and it's exactly what the program is intended to do. The elimination of slum and blight, the use of these funds is intended to heighten the awareness of the community, improve the community, raise the tax level. You know, a rising tide raises all ships, and that's the goal.
So you don't retain any kind of documentation that this, and this was done, and this is in place, and this is valid because it is unlivable or the structure?
Oh, yes, oh, yeah, yeah. The whole review by the codes office, the deficiency, the notices sent to the property owner, the tax delinquency, all of those things are managed by our office, the redevelopment authority, and legal counsel.
So is it word of mouth, or is there pictures taken?
Codes office.
And there are pictures taken of every
Oh, yeah.
property. It's a pretty extensive process, especially when there's grant money involved, because we never want anyone to be able to come back and say, we didn't follow everything, cross our T's, dot our I's, and take the money back.
Yeah,
So it's pretty thorough. I think you'd be impressed.
The environmental review actually assesses all of the potential environmental impacts of the demolition of the project. It includes photos. If it's over 50 years old, it includes contact to the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. It's a very elaborate, extensive process.
Thank you.
The last thing I have this evening is an inquiry to the members of the public or to the members of council. Are there any historical or environmental impacts that you are aware of for any of the projects that I talked about that are currently under consideration? That would include the sidewalk project proposed by the public. It would include Chestnut Street, clearance and demolition, the fire service projects. Is anyone aware of any environmental or any historical concerns for those projects? Normally, we don't get any response to that question. We are required to ask it in case someone in the audience is.
What about the jail?
The jail, unfortunately, does not belong to the city, it belongs to the county. The county gets their own allocation of CDBG funds. So if the county wanted to invest in it, they may be able to. How it gets reused is really the question for whether or not it will be eligible for CDBG funds. If it's just to restore it as a county facility, it would not be. If it's to restore it for some other kind of eligible use, it could be in eligible activity. It would require a cooperation between the county owning it and the city, who would have some of the beneficiary, and since they each get their own allocation, they'll have to work together to do that. We administer for Northumberland County, so we could certainly facilitate that if there's a desire for the county to do so.
Because they also say that that's on the registry.
Oh, that's absolutely eligible. I don't know if it's on, but I can tell you it's eligible. So that's, from our perspective, eligible and on are the same thing. We have to treat them both the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's a good question, Owner Jill. Any further discussion, questions from council? Thank you very much.
The next meeting is the final decisions, correct, 27th?
Pardon?
Project selection, next meeting will be the final decision, June 27th?
Yes, yep, yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan, did you stay awake for all that?
I did.
Okay.
Sign-in sheet? If I could get those
Sign up sheet
back.
passing around yet? Keep signing that,
Please,
please.
so they done, or?
I was with the sign up sheet. Mr. Roush, would you have any SRI to report on?
Sure, I'll quickly go over some things. The Albright Building, we will be launching very soon a campaign for fundraising. It's not quote-unquote a public campaign yet, but we plan to raise a significant amount of private funds and later to apply for government funding to match those private funds. The cost of that project is somewhere between $3 and $6 million. So that will provide an education, arts, and event center for the area. Some recent activities, we have Wake the Lake. For the first time, we used the dock on the water in order to launch water rides, which were full the entire time. We also participated in the Loving Street Festival this past weekend, as well as held a sidewalk sale and the citywide yard sales. The new event coming up is going to be Movies on the River. Those will take place the fourth Tuesday of the month in the warm months, June, July, and August. It's interesting to note that of all of our activities, that already has the most followers on Facebook, and there's 600 followers for that particular activity. So we expect it to be well attended. We're actually going to be testing the screen tonight on the water. And the fifth thing, of course, is the regular and oldest event, which is the River Festival, which will be coming up on its usual weekend in August. That's it.
Thank you very much. New business, transfer $30,000 from GF to debt service. Ms. Kramer?
On the city real estate taxes, we collect the 2% debt tax to pay our debt off. And Kevin is going to transfer the $30,000 from the general fund into the debt service account so that we can pay off our debt of the tax anticipation bill.
What type of tax was that?
Tax anticipation note.
Anticipation.
We borrow that every December, so we have money to pay the bills in January, February, March.
Thank you.
You advising that? I don't know that we ever voted.
I don't think we ever voted for it, it's just an information.
Okay. Hire part-time public works, Dale?
Yes, I'd like to hire 2 part-time guys, 35 hours a week, at $8.50 an hour, and they are summer seasonal.
Can we do that with the Obamacare Act? I thought
Yes.
29 hours was the limit.
It was 28.
No, but they're only seasonal.
Seasonal is the question.
Seasonal is
Okay.
exempt.
Okay.
So I'd like to make that in the form of a motion to be hired.
You got the money? Okay. Call for the vote?
Hey, I actually have an extra 5,000 I got from Jim last year, because he's not letting his FIA kids.
Loud, Jim.
We have a second, don't we?
That's it.
Jim said.
Yes. And Jim said,
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Ms. Kramer?
yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Approval to pay invoices, Beth.
The general fund bills come to $47,846.26. I make a motion that we pay those.
I'll second.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Ms. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Just ask me.
I have Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
And then I'd like to make another motion to pay $1,950.27 out of liquid fuel.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Ms. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr.